Welcome to the Star Chamber. I'm Ryan Swayze, a retired Air Force Lieutenant Colonel and the founder and president of the Walk the Talk Foundation, a nonprofit that advocates for and advises currently serving and former military service members going through the arduous journey of administrative processes and investigations in our government.
And I am Francescagraham, a retired Army Lieutenant Colonel and the Chief Operating Officer and Chief Advisor for the Walk the Talk Foundation. For all our returning guests, welcome back. And for our new listeners, thank you for tuning in. Before we begin this week's topic, please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, check out our Walk the Talk Foundation website, and hit that donate button if you think we're doing a good job. Also, check out our newsletter, the DoD Times Redacted, on all the socials, including LinkedIn, X, Instagram, and Facebook. Links in the description. All right, Star Chamber listeners, let's get started. Welcome back, Star Chamber listeners, to another great episode of the Star Chamber. And this episode, I think, is going to be a little bit sobering for quite a few people. We have the great honor today to be joined by a recently retired Army Lieutenant Colonel who is a survivor of sexual assault in the military. And not only is she a survivor of sexual assault in the military, she also is a victim of the Department of Defense's absolutely abhorrent administrative and legal processes, which promised her one thing when she joined the military, and then after she reported sexual assault, her lived experience is entirely contradictory to the promises that she was given by the military of how they would care for her, how they would do a just and thorough investigation, and so on. But I won't steal away too much from that story. First, I'm just going to read a quick bio for her. Our guest is Bethany McDonough. She is a recently retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel. She enlisted in 2003 and commissioned in 2007 into the Army National Guard as a military intelligence officer. Ruh-roh, go Intel! I was Intel, in case you guys didn't know. Oh boy. She served a total of 22 years in the Army National Guard and the U.S. Army Reserves in a variety of operational and strategic intelligence positions, and later incorporated her economic background into her military service. She deployed to Afghanistan in 2009 to 2010 with the 48th Infantry Brigade Combat Team, leading an intelligence analyst team, while assigned in the Military Intelligence Readiness Brigade, Command, also known as the MERC. As an economic intelligence officer in 2018, she conducted research and analysis for real-world mission requirements in the Central Command Theater. For those of you who don't know, that is where Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran, etc. are located in Central Command. So several of our larger areas where military forces are deployed. While assigned as the Merck Foundry Program Manager from 2019 to 2022, she managed a $6 million military intelligence training program. In 2023 to 2024, while assigned as the J21, as personnel, budget analyst in Stuttgart, Germany, she worked with members of the Joint Staff J2, that's the intelligence section, of the U.S. European Command Headquarters in submission of the Program of Management support of the fiscal year's defense program. Now, you guys don't know this, but when Bethany sent this bio to me, it had all the acronyms in it, and I just successfully read all of them out. So I'm kind of proud of that, including POM, the Program of Management. For those of you who don't know, that is a nasty little thing, budget thing that tells Congress how much money we would like to be able to run our systems. Program. It's this very thing that it doesn't sound serious. POM, who cares? Whatever. It's like a pom-pom. No, there's billions of dollars in that thing. All right, so before I hand it over to Ryan for his opening comments, I've got a couple more admin things. I'd like to read a quick disclaimer. The opinions and views expressed by guests on this podcast are solely their own and do not represent the official policies, positions, or endorsements of the United States Army or any other government entity. This discussion is intended for informational purposes only and should not be construed as reflecting the official stance of any military or governmental organization. And my final piece of admin before I hand this off to Ryan is that given ongoing administrative and legal processes involving this particular case. We will not be naming names. And so we will be speaking really to the right of Bethany's reporting of the sexual assault so that we can have a full discussion about the utter failings of the DoD's administrative and legal processes. With that, Ryan, I'll turn over to you for any other opening comments, and then we'll get this show going.
Brilliantly introed. First of all, Francesca. Francesca, hi. Bethany, hi. So, Bethany, first and foremost, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for exhibiting the moral courage that I wish so many other members and especially leaders of our military would personify. It really does take a hell of a lot to put yourself out there after what you've gone through. So thank you for that. And then to all the people that your efforts are going to benefit, and you may never know them and you may never meet them, on behalf of all the people that are going to benefit from your courage, thank you for doing what you do. You know, we're going to talk a lot about your personal saga and the traumatic experiences from that. But, you know, I'd like the listeners to think about it in the guise of this is not just a story about sexual assault in the military, which we hear a lot about. It's about how the military says it's going to do something for its service members when our Congress says it's going to enact laws that do things for our service members. And then those systems, those laws fail the service member. And then there's no retribution, there's no recourse, there's no redress. There's no oversight from our Congress to boot for when the military doesn't do what it should be doing. And that's a theme that we see across our work in the foundation, and a theme we're going to see in your story as well. So thanks for coming on. Thanks for trusting Walk the Talk Foundation with your case as we work through the administrative side of the house for you. And without further ado, I'd like to talk a little bit about what brought you here, what fueled that courage, what sparked that interest to come on and tell about your story in such a public way.
Thanks, Ryan. Thank you for having me. And Francesca, thank you as well. Working with your foundation has been very, very beneficial for me to take back a lot of agency in what I've been through. What brought me to being a client and wanting to speak about what I've been through is that because my case has gone on for so long, I've learned a lot about the process, and very few people actually talk about what they've been through after the fact. So it took me, I've been, I reported in 2022, and 3.5 years later, it took me that long to recognize some of the issues that a lot of service members who report, they will never recognize the issues because most of the reporting it happens so quickly. And while I was going through this, I read everything I could get my hands on regarding other service members' experiences, to include yours, to include Ryan's, because it made me feel less alone. Like listening to other service members' experiences, it made me feel less alone. And so given, everything that I've been through, I feel like it's my duty to be able to talk about this for other service members in the future. And then, additionally, that service members deserve to know what they're getting into when they jump off that cliff and report. And, so is the general public, so that they can make informed decisions about whether or not they'll serve.
Thank you. Yeah, and you hit on something. I'm going to go off script very quickly here and throw the whole thing out of whack right off the bat. Sorry, Cheska. But something you said really caught my interest, Bethany, which is for every person that report, and we can never know the statistics for certain, but for every person that reports and comes forward, I wonder how many don't come forward. And I thought about that in my case, where there are some parallels where I was going through the Defense Intelligence Agency scandal, and people were coming forward reporting wrongdoings of regulation and laws and intelligence oversight violations. And for every person that I got a written statement from, there were probably 3 who said, I know something's going on, but I'm too scared to come forward. So I make that point because a lot of times the Poindexters of our military go, well, the statistics would say, and I would caution them to deep dive in those numbers, because for everyone that reports, whatever the wrongdoing in the military, there is a significant proportion of people who are victimized by the same thing, who do not come forward because the fear of retribution is so palpable in our Department of Defense/War.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, so for me, reporting it, I've known people that this has happened to that are very close to me. And so for me, it was like ripping off the Band-Aid. I immediately, I wasn't gonna not report. And so I did it very quickly without really, also I reported because I believed that the system would work, that, there had recently been legislation passed for, UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice reformations. And so there was all these reforms out there and there was the standing up of the Office of Special Trial Counsel. And then additionally, like the person that I reported was a senior officer at the Pentagon. And I just I assumed that the chain of command would bend over backwards to do everything right. And when I say everything right, I mean, treat the victim fairly. That's, I didn't expect any particular outcome. I assumed I would be treated fairly. And I assumed that because, billions of dollars have been spent over the course of the last 20 years, making me believe that.
Yeah.
When you first reported, given all of that, given, all the briefings, all the things that we're told about how the military cares about SHARP, and you reported to Office of Special Trial Counsel, there are all these SHARP promises set. What did you believe the process would look like when you reported?
I honestly, I don't know that I had an idea of what the process was. So to be quite honest, like as a reservist and in the National Guard, we don't have court martials unless we're on active duty in a deployed zone. There's no reserves general court martial convening authority. They don't exist. So even when I did report, many senior officers that I spoke with did not know how a court martial would happen. And so again, I didn't know. I just presume, I mean, in all of the ways in which you can kind of see in your military career experiences, where you see that there's kind of like political gamemanship about how decisions are made. I never dreamed that would also apply to sexual assault. That was just not on my radar. So now I know a little bit more now. So my own experience with the military justice system and the IG investigatory system is that there's actually quite a bit of tolerance for sexual assault, sexual harassment. And the messaging of SHARP and the Army overall is still no tolerance for sexual assault and sexual harassment. And my experience with the military justice system and the IG investigatory system is that there's actually quite a bit of tolerance for both of those things in the military. And so, I mean, the realities that I've come to realize during the reporting process, the military is not living up to the standards that it is setting for itself. And the messaging that it is wrong, and it's dangerous. It's dangerous because, I have 2 degrees, I have multiple lawyers at my disposal. I did everything that I was supposed to do, and I spent 3 years not receiving justice.
And something you said a little bit earlier I wanted to spin off of is you had said that, in your response to the question of what did you believe the process would look like? And you said, well, I don't really know. And so you're not really focused on these internal processes for sexual assault. But there are people who are specialists in that field, the commanders, the JAG, the EO rep, the sexual assault response coordinator. Not only should they know, do they know, but when at the time that Bethany reported this, they should have opened up all of these different options for her that she should pursue. So that's one part of just an observation I wanted to make. And so then kind of taking that zero tolerance thing that you were talking about a second ago, how did the military's messaging about zero tolerance shape your decision to report?
I mean, it absolutely shaped my decision. I was very convinced that the chain of command in the military district of Washington would do everything right. And even after I reported, I remember someone telling me, this guy, he's got connections up the wazoo. You need to be careful. And I still believed that I had nothing to worry about. I mean, we'll get into this in a few minutes, but the reality was just so different than what I was led to believe.
And it's interesting too, Cheska, because you bring up the fact that, the complainants, victims, etc., are navigating in the dark. This is why the foundation exists, because that's exactly what happens to virtually everyone we work with. They have really, and Francesca and I are included in this, when we walk into this star chamber of air quotes justice, the military doesn't educate you. First of all, they don't represent you, they don't counsel you, they don't give you guidance, but they also don't educate you on what your rights and entitlements are.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're walking in blind, trusting that the other person on the other side of the table, who's supposed to be the alleged subject matter expert, who's supposed to be ensuring the process is run correctly, is really kind of an amateur boob. And we find that in the IG system, literally, this is no exaggeration, with 95% of the cases we deal with, is that the so-called experts don't even know their job. So how are they to ensure that you are being afforded due process? And it's another failure of the system we see throughout.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you, Ryan. I think you had mentioned, Bethany, that reading my little story helped make you feel less alone. And
Oh, absolutely.
I'm sure you got a little bit of a chuckle out of the fact that a sexual harassment form, the official complaint, wasn't even filled out until 15 months after I reported. And it was only even then filled out because I somehow magically found it. Didn't matter that I had told what is it? The brigade commander, the battalion commander, the chief of staff, my team leader, the EO rep, and the SARC all about sexual
Sounds
harassment.
like you didn't do it right, Francesca.
No, Ryan,
that was for my girl.
You gotta get General Potter. Oh, I know. You gotta get General Potter.
You go about it the right way, Francesca. That's not
no, Ryan, you're still getting it wrong. It's still not that good. She said, "Well, Francesca, I think you might have gotten the help you needed if you had spoken to the right people."
Perfect.
Who cares? You spoke to the brigade commander,
well
SARC,
done,
Well done, General Potter. Well, retired General Potter now. I think she retired last week or something.
What a shame.
Yeah, she'll be sitting on some board getting millions of dollars, spewing her leadership all over the floor, I'm sure. Okay, all right. All right, back to it. Bethany, I'm so sorry about that. Like I said pre-show, we try to laugh a little bit during these things because this is some real dark, terrible stuff. So, okay, so you reported, you had hope, you had trust, you believed all the lies, the dirty, nasty lies that you've been told by the DoD and all your commanders and all the stuff all these years, right? So, and you're now trying to not only navigate the system of reporting, but you're also trying to heal as a sexual assault victim, which is, I mean, that's just a freaking lot. And oh, by the way, you're also trying to perform at a high level as a senior officer in the military. I mean, that's a big burden to carry, right? So what were the first red flags that you saw that the system was not working the way that it promised?
Yeah, so when I reported, initially I reported to a civilian police department. This person that I knew for about a week and a half, I didn't even know if he was still on active duty, and it turned out that he was. So the case was quickly turned over to CID. And then then I was like kind of just waiting, like, what are they going to do? Okay, I reported. What are they going to do? Come to find out, I reported 90 days prior to this person's retirement date from the military. And the longer it kept going and I kept not hearing anything, things seemed stranger and stranger. And I was being asked to like come in for interviews, like right after I had surgery, while I was on pain medication, and it's like 2 weeks out before this guy's going to retire. And some of the details of the assault, which I'm not going to get into right now, I was afraid of this person. Like, this person was going to, if the military district of Washington did nothing, then this person was going to work at a military schoolhouse about 1.5 miles down the road from where I worked on Fort Belvoir. So if they do nothing, I'm like, okay, well, I have a problem. Like, what? And I think I asked, like, point blank, like, what is the process under which you're going to delay this person's retirement? How does that work? And they just blew me off and didn't answer it. So 1 week out, they did wind up delaying this individual's retirement, he did eventually get charged.
So, in addition to not just your own personal interaction, highly negative interaction with this individual, you were also very concerned that he was going to have access to other service members through a teaching environment, and you felt that that was unacceptable. So, they delayed his retirement and they ended up charging him. So, can you kind of walk us through the preliminary hearing, like what was said, how did it feel? Kind of describe that a little bit.
Sure. So in the Uniform Code of Military Justice, the charge occurs, and that's really looked upon more like an arrest. And then there's a preliminary hearing in which an outside judge advocate is going to review the evidence to decide whether or not there is probable cause for the case to proceed to trial. And there is a civilian equivalent, I believe it's called a grand jury. So I wasn't present. My attorney was present on my behalf. The feedback that I received, and then I also read what the defense attorney wrote about me, where he's, arguing that there's no probable cause because blah, 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 blah. The preliminary hearing officer didn't have he was not, no experience in criminal justice. He was some other sort of lawyer. And then everything the defense attorney wrote about me was basically like just rape myths, like anything that you can say about, like, you can tear apart any rape victim with, victim blaming types of language. You can do that in any case. And that's pretty much what it was. There wasn't any like magic going on. It was basically just, let's fling a bunch of stuff against the wall and see what sticks. But this was being used to justify no probable cause, and thereby, like, that gets handed to a general court-martial convening authority, who was at the time the base commander of Fort Myer Henderson Hall, and he uses that to dismiss the charges. That's his justification to dismiss the charges. And so then so I wound up, like, I did an open door with him. I wanted to see the report that is generated by this preliminary hearing officer. I wanted to know what was read about, like what was said about me. And, we weren't allowed to receive the report. Then during this open door meeting, which was very interesting, before I had this open door meeting with, the base commander of Joint Myer Henderson Hall, I had become aware that there may be abuse allegations in the past of the officer that I reported. And so during this meeting with this base commander, I brought up that I asked whether or not there was any other victims, me knowing that there might be abuse allegations out there, not really knowing the context of what they might be. And nobody says anything. I brought up some other administrative issues where, decisions kept being made that, they benefited the officer that I reported to the detriment of myself. I brought up those issues. And then lastly, I brought up at the time that base commander had out there like a publicly available article alleging that he also committed some form of sexual misconduct years prior. And so I had a copy of the article, and I said, sir, like, I handed it to him, and I said, like, like, what is this? Like, how are you the decider of a military sexual assault case when you have this in your background? Like, how is that legal? And he just looked at me and he says, I don't think I owe you an explanation. And so I guess, yeah. So that was like, I was kind of floored at that response. Yeah.
So so now the preliminary hearing, you have the meeting with the 2-star, I'm guessing, which was the General Convening Court-Martial Authority, and the 2-star.
Not even 2-star. So I had this open door meeting with this 06.
And that's actually why I said specifically 2-star, because it seemed a little wonky to me when you said that. I specifically asked that because I'm like, wait a second, why is the Joint Myer Henderson Hall base commander, which I know is an 06 level, why is this person acting as the GCMCA? There's no general anywhere in that colonel.
That is a very interesting question. So there is, again, I didn't know this at the time, but there was the military district of Washington specifically has a strange general court-martial convening authority set up. It's the only It's the only command listed out specifically in a regulation that's saying that the commander of military district of Washington is the general court martial convening authority. Only command that has that. And they also have, and did have at the time, a withholding memorandum, like a commander policy, a commander's policy that says that any senior officer, or actually any officer or any senior ranking enlisted person, the disposition authority is the GCMCA. It's not the 06 Space Commander. And so like that combined with his own background, like they weren't following their own policies is what I'm getting at.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think you and I met actually at the court martial of Major John Batt. And after he was convicted, that his conviction did not go to an 06 GCMCA. It went to a 2-star GCMCA, where the whole general thing, where that actually. So, okay, so you had this meeting from the outset. They're not following even the most basic policies. So you got involved with, and you started talking to the Inspector General. When you turned to the Inspector General, it's kind of the same question we had before. What did you expect? And then what did you actually experience?
Yes. So simultaneously as this was occurring, my attorney challenged the decision of this 06 being authorized in a position to, to be in that position to make that decision. And so I, at that time, like, I don't trust the chain of command anymore. I don't trust that that any decision that's going to happen thereafter is going to benefit me in any way. Like, I'm already like, okay, this is all shady, but it was okay. So I'm like, all right, well, I don't think anything's going to come out of this. I think it's kind of done. So I'm like, all right, well, I submitted an IG complaint, the substance of the complaint being a mishandling of sexual assault. And it included, some of the administrative things that I was referring to, where like there was just small decisions being made that benefited him and didn't benefit me. Like, why did it take that long to hold this person's retirement? Just like little things. And then it also included, why was this 06, who has this background possibly of sexual misconduct, being put in this position? Like, this is wrong. So I submitted this IG complaint February of 2023. The investigation was completed, I believe, in September of backing up. I submitted in 2023. The investigation was completed in September of 2023. I didn't receive notification, and I'm going to jump ahead a little bit just to kind of tell the story of the IG complaint. I didn't receive notification until the spring of 2024 that it was unsubstantiated. So I immediately, like, I file a FOIA request like the next day, and to this day, like, I don't have the results of that FOIA request explaining why it was acceptable that, this person was put into this position, like all of the things. So what did happen though was the IG complaint was ultimately entered into evidence, and a copy was given to the defense attorney. So the person that I reported for sexual assault to this day has a copy of the IG complaint that I filed about the mishandling of my report of a sexual assault, which I don't know, that just blows my mind.
Okay. And who was the Inspector General overseeing? Was that Department of the Army Inspector General who did the investigation?
I submitted to the DoD IG hotline. I did that on purpose because, like, if they decide that there is enough information to initiate an investigation, they just direct the Army to do it, and the Army has to comply. And conversely, if you submit it to the Department of the Army, like, they can close it out without doing any type of investigation at all.
So the Army was the IG office that carried out the investigation?
Yes, correct. They did the investigate. Yes. The investigating officer, by the way, they assigned somebody from the G9 at HQDA.
That's interesting.
The individual, okay, so the G9 being, like, they're the program managers of, like, substance abuse, SHARP, FAP.
Oh, so there was a person within the sexual harassment assault response prevention program,
Yeah, it was the investigating
investigating
officer.
missteps within the sharp program. Okay, oh, well played. Slow golf clap for the Department of Army there.
You might
We
appreciate
we
that.
have investigated ourselves and found ourselves to be above reproach. Case closed. Well done.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it supposed to be an IG that does that, not a command appointed investigating officer, whether they're sharp or not?
Well, no, this is not, it's not an IG investigatory lane, unfortunately, because it's not, reprisal, although it probably was, but by how the complaint was formed, it wasn't, within the IG purview. So it'd be referred to command, quote unquote, who would assign an IO, and that person just happened to be the same people who effed it all up. Awesome.
Right. So now I'm just kind of keeping track of the timeline as you're going, Bethany. So you made the report in early 2022. You made the IG complaint in early-ish 2023.
Yeah.
You did not find out until springtime of 2024 that the IG unsubstantiated your complaint,
Right.
and several months prior and probably fall-ish of 2023 is when you were told that essentially nothing was going to happen to this person who had sexually assaulted you and that they were going to retire and move on with their life. Is that generally the timeline that we're working off of?
Yeah, so right after the meeting with the open door meeting with the 06, he tells me in this meeting that the officer I reported had been retired. Like, I find out at that time. And so then at that point, I'm like, okay, this is all shady. So
So before you even had a chance to appeal the decision, which is your right under due process, the Army said, go ahead and retire so that we can't touch you anymore. Or really, we can, UCMJ Article 802, but we're not going to because we're too lazy to do that.
Well, I very specifically, the IG complaint was very specifically against this SS because I'm like, okay, this doesn't, the lawyers that I worked with, everything that I could find about like the administrative details, like it all seemed to come back to him. And so knowing that he was individually the person, as far as I could read in the regulations, the person that would have made the decision to stop this individual from retiring, for instance. All these decisions seem to come back to him.
And what's interesting too, if you've listened to the show before, the Army has this evil genius thing called the flag. So I have learned. Yeah. So going the other direction, if you look cross-eyed at the command, they can flag you, and that's the vernacular, and you can't move, you can't go to school, you can't retire, and it's like it's like instantaneous. You can just have some shoe clerk go, "Hey, flag them," and they're done, right? And you try and get the unflag as like an act of Congress. It's actually quite evil genius. But so it's fascinating to me that on the flip side, when there are these accusations of sexual misconduct for a person about to retire, that somehow that is slow rolled until they're able to slip out. Whereas if it were the other direction, you'd be flagged yesterday and your veritable professional life would be in purgatory basically for months, if not years.
Yeah, it was really strange. Yeah, like that was one of the issues. Like I didn't believe that he was flagged appropriately, and I don't know for sure if that was correct or not, because I don't have the results of the complaint to this day. But what I did find, and interestingly, like there was another case, Francesca, where you and I met, where that person who was later convicted, this was the same command. So that
yeah, the MDW command.
Yeah, MDW command. So this was the same people that would have been deciding the same stuff at the same time. And that individual was able to, like, I recall that individual was able to put in a promotion packet and go to BCAP and be, selected for command and selected for 05. Like, and so I'm like, finding this out much later, I'm like, oh, I was totally right. I was absolutely right. But anyways, that's here nor there.
So kind of moving forward now, you've person's retired.
Yeah.
You've been told from the command you're, basically denied.
Yeah,
It didn't really matter is because they'd already let the person retire.
yeah.
And now the IG is coming back and saying you got nothing. So what were your next steps after that?
So my attorney, based on the allegations of possible sexual misconduct that this O6 had, my attorney requested the MDW commander to have someone else be the decision-making authority in the case. And Major General Alan Pepin, he was the MDW commander at the time, he requested a DoD civilian from the Office of Special Trial Counsel to review the case. So this case was the first one in the Army that was reviewed by OSTIC. And so I don't have the documentation of what came out of that review. What I do know is that Major General Pepin, the day before his change of command, like you can look at the letter and then you can look at what his outgoing command date was, sends a letter to my attorney basically saying, and I'm paraphrasing here, well, we don't believe that, this officer, this O6 did anything improper or wrong, but out of an abundance of caution, we're sending the case to another GCMCA, another General Court Martial Convening Authority. So it winds up getting sent to Fort Belvoir. And in September of 2023, Fort Belvoir, like they indicate that they want to move forward with the case. And I'm like, okay, well, did you talk to OSTIC? Did you talk to the person at OSTIC who reviewed it? And I get, up and down, like head nods. Yes, we did. That's kind of the reason why we're going forward with the case. And while she was in, doing her extra review, I did wind up meeting with her and I told her, like, there's possibly some abuse allegations out there. I don't know the details, but, just look into that. Like there's something else out there, I think. And I gave her the information that I had at the time, which was just some texts with another person that knew this officer I reported. And so then eventually, there was a second preliminary hearing. And so then again, so the officer I reported is now a retiree and is charged with sexual assault again. And he's also charged with an assault of another person. So there was another victim out there or a possible victim out there. And, I don't have the details. They don't like disclose it. Like I got a copy of there's a DA form that's the charge sheet. I get a copy of it and it's blocked off. The other person's information and the charge is like blocked off, like blacked out.
Yep.
So then, there's a second preliminary hearing in, January of 2024. And I'm in Germany at this time and I'm listening in on the Teams call to this preliminary hearing. So I was listening to this one and they start to discuss the other charge because the preliminary hearing officer is like asking questions like, is it really appropriate that these two charges are charged together? So for example, like if you cheat on your taxes and then you also like beat your spouse, they're not going to be in the same court case anywhere ever,
right?
Because they're just completely unrelated. Like one does not have anything to do with the other. So the preliminary hearing officer is like asking questions about the charge about like, okay, well, is this, what is this? And what I learned what I learned listening was that there was an assault charge of the officer I reported his then minor son.
Oh my God.
And like whatever the altercation was, it resulted in some type of strangulation. And again, this is just what I heard over a Teams call. I don't have any more information about that. But what I also heard was, and this is really, really bizarre, is that the officer I reported, he had pled no contest to a domestic violence charge in the Commonwealth of Virginia in 2018. 3 years.
How is he still able to serve?
Exactly.
I forget Ryan, or Bethany, do you remember what was the name of that law? Starts with the L, I
The
think.
Lautenberg Amendment. Yeah.
Yeah, if you have any convictions, you're not allowed to carry a firearm.
One would think that would get you kicked out, but it
didn't. Okay.
This wound up in the congressional inquiry later, much, much later. But so I'm listening to this and I'm just like, okay, then I kind of sit with, at first I'm just like, holy, and then I'm like sitting with it for the next few days. And then I'm it's kind of sinking in what this means. It means that when number one, my sexual assault could have been prevented. I could have never
Yes.
met this person.
Yes.
Number two, when I did report, the decision makers had to have known. Like
Yes.
they would have run, a law enforcement records check, and that would have come up. So they knew it when I reported it. And then, like, again, in this meeting with this 06, I kind of said, like, well, why, what, you don't believe me? I think I said something like that. And the response from this 06 in that open door meeting was, it's not that we don't believe you, it's that we don't know if we can get anyone else to believe you. That was the response. And so I'm like sitting, okay, so a year later, I'm hearing this and I'm like, okay, well, you didn't prevent it when you could have. And then when I reported, you decided to ignore like the criminal history that this person has. And then you also decided that the person that is more believable is the guy with the criminal record of domestic violence.
Nice. Yep. Well played.
It was really devastating to find out that I was basically just gaslit for the first year and a half. The first year, like, I can't get that time back. A year and a half, I cannot get that time back. And again, there's no way for me to contest this other than just say, please, can you please do the right thing again now?
And what was the result of that second preliminary hearing?
Yeah, so the preliminary hearing officer found probable cause, and then the general court martial convening authority ultimately did refer the case to court martial. Again, like initially, like what happens really quickly after that is that there's like a trial scheduled, and then there's a whole bunch of motions, like by the defense attorney mostly. And there are all sorts of things like motion to exclude evidence because of this, motion to dismiss the case because of this, because of that, because of like any reason under the sun. Again, like my view of what the defense attorney did. And again, it's the same defense attorney as another really recent court case, same guy. It's just flinging stuff against a wall to see what sticks. And even like reading through like some of the motions, what I can see, and as as a military intelligence officer, I have like the ability to, I've learned enough about the process and about the UCMJ that I can kind of pick apart the argument.
Yeah.
To me, it was just flinging stuff against a wall to see what sticks and try to get around any protections that are afforded to someone who's reporting the sexual assault. So protections being like the rape shield law, UCMJ has a version of that, and then not using your therapy records as evidence against you. UCMJ has a version of that. But again, like all these things get challenged repeatedly. In any case, so at this time I'm in Germany. I'm going to get off active duty soon because I'm a reservist, and for a variety of reasons, like I wound up getting my orders extended to June of 2024. And by this time I'm paying out of pocket for therapy because I'm trying to avoid having like if I use TRICARE or if I go to behavioral health, well, then my medical records are in control of the government. Anything that is quote unquote in control of the government that is possible evidence. And depending upon who the trial counsel is, who the prosecutor is, like it's kind of luck of the draw of whether or not any protections for someone who reports a sexual assault. It's like luck of the draw whether or not the protections actually, are enforced. And the judge too, like the judge has a lot of say of what evidence goes into trial or not. So again, this time, like I'm paying out of pocket for my therapy, and I delayed getting a line of duty because then I would have had to provide my medical records. So, I'm also like,
and an important point about the line of duty, because this is a nuanced thing that I've learned doing this work, is that as a reservist, and I think guardsmen as well, you have to be activated to get medical care, correct?
Yeah.
And that has to be, and in that line of duty determination, there's an entity that determines whether that occurred while in the line of duty. And if so, then you are put on orders and you are afforded medical care. However, if that does not happen or you do not apply, then you're on your own or via civilian care or out of pocket, correct?
Correct. So I was on active duty when I made my report. However, if I hadn't been, it doesn't, I would have been on SOL on my own.
Wow.
But okay, so I was on active duty, so I didn't get an LOD because and then I guess the other reason is I didn't want to get kicked out of the military for having PTSD. Like this case has gone on at that time for 2 years. And I mean, I know the both of you know, the impact is tremendous.
Yeah, and I think you had mentioned that in some of our pre-show discussion that the process itself that you were going under is sometimes in a way, and I don't mean to in any way minimize whatsoever, is almost more damaging than the assault. The process that you're enduring is almost more damaging than the assault. So can you kind of expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, so I would say, so reporting in the first place it's trauma. I mean, the assault itself is traumatizing. Reporting it, and I guess I didn't really understand this because why would anybody understand it unless you've really gone through it, or unless you're a psychologist or a counselor or something. But it was very traumatic immediately. And what happens when you make a report is it's just picking away at the trauma over and over and over again. Say I'm trying to find an example. If your dog died or your dad died and it was traumatizing, well, what if there was litigation over whether or not you were responsible for your dog dying? I'm trying to make up some kind of example, and it's getting drug out through 2.5, 3.5 years, and you're still dealing with it.
And along the way, you're realizing that there are many opportunities prior to you that you should not have even been in the situation in the first place.
Yes, correct. There's so many things that could have been done to prevent the whole situation in the first place that just weren't done. And so it picks it apart, and the longer it goes on, the more I mean, from a standpoint of moral injury, how do you have pride in serving when you know that this is when push comes to shove, this is that how do you have pride in your service anymore when you know that this is the kind of stuff that exists right under the surface?
This is how they're going to treat someone.
That's so relevant. Every case I think we work because the military is not a job, right? It's a calling.
Yeah.
And you're called to it because of the high moral and ethical values that the institution espouses, right? That's what drew you to the organization, right?
Yes.
And then when they betray and they personify the very antithesis of all those morals, it's incredibly trauma-inducing.
Yeah, so I mean, the assault itself, I mean, for anybody that doesn't understand what that can do, there's a term called rape trauma syndrome. And I don't know if it's real, but I know that I had all of the symptoms within about a week. It was pretty much I had good mental health, and a week and a half later, it was like a flip. There was a switch flipped in my brain. It was that quick. And and then I think if PTSD, my understanding of it is it can be kind of, the symptoms can subside, or they can go on for a long damn time. It's kind of one of those two camps. And so then the longer this, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, well, now it turns into territory where it's not going away.
And your whole life is impacted negatively. Every single aspect of your existence, your professional life, your personal life, your physical fitness, your mental, every single thing is impacted. There's just no way for it not to be. So, we're now in 2025, late 2025 is when we're recording this episode. You reported in
2022, February 2022.
Yep, early 2022. And this is still going on with no resolution.
Yeah, so I'm getting out with I was referred to a med board. So I avoided so much providing any medical records because I figured that's gonna happen. If I do that, that's gonna happen. And then if I'm a civilian, well, okay, the sharp services, having a victim advocate available, the special victims counsel, which is so the Army will, or the services will provide a lawyer to a service member going through a sexual assault case. I won't have that anymore. So I didn't want to get kicked out with PTSD because I would lose those things. I didn't want to bring all this into my civilian job because like, how do you, like, that is, I mean, it's tough going through something like this and performing at a high level at all. And and the military has some understanding of PTSD and sexual assault and what it can do. And I did not want to bring it into my civilian job. Like, what if I lost my job?
Right. So when you contacted the foundation several months ago,
Yeah.
what was the status of your overall case, and also really what are the victories that you're seeking to achieve within this?
Okay, so the status for when I contacted the foundation was that the case got delayed, and there was a scheduled trial in January of 2025. Excuse me, February of 2025. So this year, the case was supposed to go to trial, and it got dismissed in January in like a really shady set of circumstances. And like my attorneys after that, they were assisting, like they did some appeal requests. They appealed to the Military District of Washington, the Office of Special Trial Counsel, asked the Office of Special Trial Counsel, and they said like, okay, well, you believed in this case back then, will you please take it now? And again, like the case was dismissed in like this really shady set of
dismissed by where and by whom was it dismissed?
Let me see. So it was dismissed by the base commander of Fort Belvoir. So one of the motions that the defense attorney filed was a motion to dismiss because so in 2023, when the law changed, the evidentiary standard of a case to go to court kind of changed. The manual for court martial says something to the effect of that the staff advocate, who's like the advisor of the commander, staff advocate has to consider, this is what it says, consider whether or not the case can sustain and maintain a conviction. What that means is that it will not, it can get a conviction and then it won't be overturned on appeal. That's what that means. In the past, manual for court martial did not have any language of that type. So pretty much cases that had probable cause went to court martial all the time. Like 90% of them.
So you're essentially being punished and you're being denied any sort of justice because of how long the military drugged this out.
Correct.
And so the law changed.
Correct.
And so your case is being held to the standard of the new law.
Correct.
Even though you brought the case a year and a half earlier.
Yes.
And oh, by the way, isn't it fascinating that they, at the same time they're creating this independent from the chain of command, that's air quotes, OSTC, they're changing the language so it's harder to go to trial.
Correct.
Again.
Correct. Yeah.
Wow.
So let me see. So again, I got grandfathered into a general court martial convening authority being the decider. So OSTIC wasn't making this decision. A base commander was making the decision.
Which still doesn't make sense. It's a freaking 06. That's an 06. It's not a general. It's in the name, people.
I mean, so utilizing like I've the decision-making authority from 2019 with the evidentiary standard of 2023, which just, it favors the accused.
Absolutely.
I mean, at least that's what happened for me. And then I guess the other thing that was really bothersome was that, again, all of the motions, there was like 11 motions. I just described one of them. Well, the other ones were excluding evidence based on because of this, because of that. Like, what was also disturbing is that this decision is being made that somehow the case doesn't meet the new evidentiary standard. And at the same time, there are decisions being made about what evidence stays in and what does not stay in. And like, I don't want to go through all the evidence, but there's a number of different things that I think were excluded. But I don't know because I didn't receive the motions. Again, okay, so according to, let me see here, Article 6B rights, I am allowed to be present for all of these motions hearings where these motions are argued. And in the civilian, equivalent, they have a database where, like, the reason that we all know what's happening in the courts associated with, the administration on an ongoing day-to-day basis is because anytime a motion is filed or a lawsuit is filed, it is public information immediately.
Right.
No, you don't get to decide what the public sees and what they don't. So, but in the military justice system, it's service by service. And so the Army has a way to, so there's also a law called Article 148 that directs the Department of Defense to create a system where all records, court filings, reports are publicly available to the public.
Right.
So these motions about excluding evidence, I don't have the motions. Again,
if I could just, something for all of our listeners to understand is that if you become a victim of, in this case, sexual assault, and you report it, something that a lot of people don't understand, and what you have experienced throughout your entire situation, and very explicitly in this particular instance, is that your story is no longer the priority for the prosecution.
Yeah.
Like, the prosecution is not representing you.
Correct.
The prosecution is representing the government.
Correct.
And so the argument that the Army would make, or the argument the military makes, is that, well, I don't have to give Bethany a copy of the motions.
Yeah.
Because I'm not her lawyer. I'm the government's lawyer.
Correct.
Which is just one of 1,000 other different ways to make you as the victim, and not, I don't want to say intentionally, right? But the result is it makes you as the victim feel that much less dismissed, discarded, kept out of the loop, don't have rights, don't have a say, etc. And the services, they got together and they said, well, we'll have a special victim counsel in order to help these sexual assault and rape victims actually understand a little bit more and navigate the system. But what's actually happened with these SVCs that I've seen, at least over time, and maybe you can expound on this or say if I'm, smoking dope, Bethany, is that the SVCs really, truly, they also work for the government.
Yeah.
And they can make motions. This is something that happened to another case. They can make motions about your case and give decisions to the court on your case without ever even having notified you that they made a decision, such as, will you settle? And they can say, yes, you will settle the case, and they have never even asked you if you're okay with it.
So there's, Article 6B rights is like, there's a civilian equivalent. It's basically like your rights as a crime victim, and it's to be present for the motions, to, confer with the prosecutor, to a whole bunch of different things. The right to, not experience, undue delay, and be treated fairly. That's one that's in there. Be treated fairly.
Yep.
And there's no teeth to them. Like, there's nothing happens if Article 6B rights are violated. An SVC, they can strongly word some language to a judge, but a judge is not, there's no motivation to protect the rights of and I've been to another trial where I kind of watched it in practice, where, every time the judge anytime where there was a decision to protect the rights of the victim versus the rights of the person accused, the judge, time and time again, it appeared to me like 70% of the time, he was protecting the rights of the accused. And so again, and even after, if somebody is like wrongfully convicted, let's just say that somebody's wrongfully convicted, they have appeal rights.
Mm-hmm.
Sentencing longer than 6 months, they automatically get a right to appeal. And this whole story that I've described, I do not have any right to appeal any of it.
Right. You have the right to an open door with a non-general officer saying that he's the GCMCA authority.
Correct. Yes. Pound sand.
Right.
Tough luck.
Like, we don't believe you, but other people will not believe you, which is an exquisite form of gaslighting. So you contacted us.
Yeah.
Your case was dismissed. I know your lawyers are still working through that. I know you had a conversation with Office of Special Trial Counsel and you were gaslit again, and I thoroughly enjoyed putting them on public blast on our social media accounts for that nonsense that they did. So now with us, you're working on congressionals. I think you're working on additional IG complaints. So what's your vision going forward in addition to the stuff you're doing with us, but also I know you've engaged with our advisor Ben Millark about changes to the NDA, congressional new legislation, etc.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like really low hanging fruit, like Article 140A, like that law exists to create transparency in sexual assault cases so that you can't just not give a motion and then not explain why you're dismissing a case.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, another one is the Lautenberg Amendment. Like to this day, I wonder like how many other officers in the Pentagon exist that have, violent convictions that would prevent them from, enlisting. But they're just out there going from duty station to duty station, and they can continue to commit violent offenses.
Yeah.
Then Article 6B rights, like there's no teeth to that. So why is that? Why do I, number one, not have an appeals process available to me other than the IG, which does nothing if my rights are violated? And why is nobody held accountable if my rights are violated? Like that's one of the things in Sharp. One of the first things that you get a piece of paper that says, these are your Article 6B rights.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess like I would also say like there's committees in the DoD, like the Department of Defense has advisory committees that discuss all these things. The UCMJ reforms, this is not like a one deal. Like, I mean, I've just listed a whole bunch of things that could be changed.
Mm-hmm.
And there were like standing committees, Defense Advisory Committee for the Investigation and Prosecution of, I don't know exactly, it's called DAC-IPAD. That's one where they discuss prosecutions of sexual assault. There's another one that's called the Military Justice Reform Board, I believe, Review Board. That is an advisory committee to Congress to discuss reforms to UCMJ. And like, those committee members are not operational right now because the committee members have been dismissed by the Secretary of Defense. So like I'm on here in this podcast because, in the past, what I could have done with my experience is write about it and make some suggestions and submit it with public comments to these committees. And I can't now because those committees are not operational. I mean, this stuff is like really low hanging fruit, in my opinion.
If you could speak directly to a future victim, what do they deserve that you did not get?
Let's see. I would say, know that this is what can happen. This can be the outcome. No tolerance in the military for sexual assault, sexual harassment. That is a myth. If you decide to go down this road, get a civilian attorney. Like, just do it immediately. And I mean, know that this can be the outcome. And don't be afraid, and this is a big ask, to talk about your experience afterward, because it matters. Your experience matters, and nothing changes if victims continue to be silenced in the way that I feel like I have been.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because then you feel alone. You don't know that there's other people out there who have experienced the same thing and who are fighting.
Yeah.
I guess kind of my last big question, and then I'll turn it over to Ryan. So what keeps you going after 3.5 years of this fight?
Okay, so the most disturbing thing to me was that I saw a recent trial where there was a lot of evidence that looked a lot like my case, but there was many victims in that other trial. I watched it because like in the future, like I went to this trial because it was local to me. And I wanted to have a better understanding of like, what I didn't get. I didn't get this justice. What does it look like for someone who actually, goes through the entire process? And like, I recall in my conversation with OSTIC very recently, like a month ago, I kind of said like, well, the evidence in my case and the evidence of this other case where there's a whole bunch of victims, the evidence in my case is better. So how can you tell me that, like, why is my case not prosecutable and all these others are? And, the discussion point was, well, there's a whole bunch of them and only one of you. And I looked at him and I said, I'm sorry, that's absolute bullshit. And, oh, by the way, like, what kinds of cases are you going to take then? Because 80% of them are like mine.
Right.
And like, how is this where we are? And Gale Hook was 30 years ago.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, I've had 20 years of shark briefs telling me that there's no tolerance to find out that there's a whole lot of tolerance. And so what kept me going was this like need to, probably as soon as I figured out that some of the bureaucratic stuff that we see on a day-to-day basis in the military also applies to sexual assault. And
Mhm.
I mean, myself, like I'm the second female service member in my family to have been sexually assaulted while on active duty.
Wow.
So it is not okay that 30 years later, we're still screwing around with the same problems.
And to minimize it into saying, well, there's only one person. So you're the only victim. So
Yeah.
it's not a big deal. So we don't have, never mind the fact that let's go back a little ways, that there was actually another victim of violence by this person.
Yeah.
And there's a no contest plea
Mhm.
from 2018 of violence, and it's all intimate
Yeah.
violence, we'll say, because that's a term, intimate violence.
Yeah.
And so in that case, there's actually 3 victims
Right.
of intimate violence in this case. But for sexual assault specifically, you're the only victim, so therefore we don't have a case.
Correct. Yes.
And that was coming from, I'm guessing, probably given your rank, that was probably another lieutenant colonel,
Correct.
Army person. Yep.
Yep. That's correct.
Army lawyer saying that to you.
Yes, that's correct. So, yeah, I felt like it's my duty as a service member, and quite frankly, as a human being, to talk about what I've been through. So I'm really glad that you and Brian gave me a way to do that. So thank you.
No, thank you, Bethany. And over to you, Ryan, for closing comments.
Okay, yeah. Thanks again, Bethany, for your courage and great interview to you and Cheska. Talking about a lot of themes that we see across the board, regardless of what the wrongdoing is. The pattern is the same, which is the military says it's going to do one thing, it doesn't. And then we have an asleep at the wheel Congress who watches it all happen. And this is no exception. I'll tell you one of the things that we started to touch on, but really didn't talk to, and I'll end with this because we've hit on all the other major themes, I believe, is this new movement to ensure more rights for the accused, which to me is asinine. So in the administrative, and I'm not familiar as much with the MST arena, but in the administrative arena, current substantiation rates are hovering about 1.7%. That means, and those don't include dismissals. So 99 nearly percent of complaints filed in the administrative arena right now are not substantiated. 99% are not substantiated. And what is the emphasis on? More rights for the accused. It's insane. It is literally insane.
It's the same in the MST.
The MST is the same thing. And I've heard a lot of very irresponsible, talking to some of you influencers out there.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of very irresponsible claims and calls to war against, in this arena, especially in the MST arena, military sexual trauma arena, about false complaints, false allegations, frivolous allegations. I'm calling some people out here. You listen to this show and you tell me it's false. You tell me it's frivolous. And by the way, if you're a parent with a child thinking about going to the military, you listen to this and tell me it's not a threat. And with that, I'll end my soapbox speech.
Thank you so much, Bethany. Did you have any closing comments you'd like to leave us with?
I'm just really grateful that your organization exists. So I like when I read through, some of your stuff that was out there, I was like, oh my gosh, like same command, the same, kind of the same time frame. And I am just really glad that there is an avenue to, I feel like I've been quiet for so long, that I'm grateful that there's an avenue for me to stop the silence. So thank you.
Yep. And yeah, I think you said when we were talking before the show, how you realized, or you decided, not realized, you decided that it was time to no longer be silent, because and this is what the Army, the military wants. They want you to be silent, because your silence further empowers the people who are doing the bad things. And not just doing the bad things, but like that 06.
The chain that's complicit in allowing it to happen.
Right. Yep. Because if I were to be super cynical, I would say, let's face it, they didn't want to deal with this because the guy was about to retire and they didn't want to do the paperwork.
Or he's somebody's bro.
Yes. Correct.
Or he's somebody's bro.
Yep.
They just didn't want to do the paperwork.
Yeah.
Because kind of like this, like CW4, when I was a company commander who put my signature on an Army Emergency Relief Fund loan to her for $2,400. But she was a month away from retiring, so the battalion commander made the decision not to do anything because he didn't want to do the paperwork.
Perfect.
And with that, Bethany, thank you so much again.
Bethany.
I mean, this is just incredibly courageous of you, and we appreciate you sharing the story. We appreciate you helping future yous, future me's, future anybody's who is experiencing or maybe experiencing these types of complete abortions of justice. That's a pretty violent term that I've heard in the past, but I think it fits for this one. And so thank you so much for sharing, for the courage for sharing, and we will see everyone next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, that's it for this week's topic. We really appreciate you tuning in. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and check out our foundation website at walkthetalkfoundation.org.
And feel free to reach out and give us feedback. You can get a hold of us via Facebook, X, Instagram, LinkedIn, and our foundation's website. Details in the description section. Thanks for tuning in, and see you next episode.